So what do you get when you have a hook, Cabrini Green, and a lot of bees? One of the greatest horror movies of all time, 1992's Candyman. Candyman is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love this movie. The whole tone of the movie is completely different from most horror movies that I've already watched. So, it definitely has made an everlasting impression on the way I see horror movies and how I see Tony Todd. I first was introduced to Tony Todd, aka Candyman, in Night of the Living Dead, George Romero, of course, and it was such a good movie. And that's when I found out that I knew that Candyman was going to be good before I even watched Candyman. And no, this is not the first time I've watched it. I've watched it several times. I just thought I'd review it today. I just finished watching it about 30 minutes ago. I was cleaning my room. I'll put it in and I'll take some notes on it so I can share with y'all. So, there we go. Candyman, aka Tony Todd. I just told you he was in Night of the Living Dead. He actually was not the original person to be cast in this. They did not want a serious... They wanted more of an Eddie Murphy type. It was said in the interview. I watched it after the film. But yeah, they actually wanted more of a energetic type. And if you know Tony Todd, you know that is very much not his style. He's very melodramatic. He's tall. Very menacing. But perfect for the role. Then you have Helen, aka Virginia Madsen. She is awesome in this movie. She also was not the original as well. Originally, the producer, or not the producer, the whoever, I forgot his name. His wife was supposed to be Helen, and then she became pregnant, and that's when they got Virginia Madsen to just play Helen. Perfect choice in my opinion, and you'll see why in a little bit. So, there's two main things about this movie that I really, really, really enjoy. I enjoy the suspense of it because, A, you don't see Tony Todd. I'm going to just say Tony Todd. You'll know who I'm talking about. You don't see him till 45 minutes into the movie, as in person, the first interaction between Helen and the Candyman. It's 45 minutes into the movie, and when they finally do meet, it's my favorite scene of the entire movie. It's in the parking garage. If you've seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's when Candyman appears and he starts speaking to Helen. And his voice is so just, it's mesmerizing almost. You get lost in it. It's insane. So, you're already hooked. And then, come to find out, her eyes are always gorgeous in this movie. And the way they light to show just her trance. She's so lost in every word he's saying. Come to find out, she was actually really hallucinated multiple times for this movie. The last time they were going to put her in her trance, she finally said no, and that was at the end of the movie because it was just taking too much out of her. So she couldn't do it anymore. So, she was really hypnotized. He was really good. Magic. So the movie keeps going, and the whole movie is based around the urban legend of Candyman anyway, which was heavily talked about in Cabrini Green, which if you don't know what that is, it was rough. It was housing projects. They were built super cheap. You could literally punch through the cinder block walls. That's just how cheap they were made. And there was a lot of violence. I mean, the police couldn't even control Cabrini Green, so they left it alone. And actually, at the time of shooting the film, ooh, that was terrible wording. There was 5 active gangs at the time. And actually, at the beginning of the film, when I forgot her name, Virginia Madsen, Helen, and her colleague, I forgot her name. I want to say it's Bernadette, are going to research the Candyman urban legend. The gang members in the front were actually real gang members that the studio paid in order to make the movie feel more real. But they actually lived in Cabrini Green. They also had police snipers on top of the buildings just to make sure nothing got out of hand. But, I mean, it was intense shooting this movie because they really were in Cabrini Green. So, I mean, it wasn't one of those things where they took a picture of the outside of the building and then they had a stage. Now, they did have a stage for Candyman's lair because, obviously, that would have been way too much to try to do. And that would have been a mess. So, they actually built his lair separate. And then the fire scene was in they had 2 separate fires. They actually had not all of, but the civilians to gather garbage and take it and pile it so they could actually have that fire scene. So those were actually real fires that were just the trash of the people. But anyway, the central basis of the movie and Candyman's story is back in the olden times. He was a painter and he fell in love with this girl, and then the crazy dad, who was also a racist, as many people were back then, they lynched him. And so a group of men cut off his hand, replaced it with a hook. Then they took a honeycomb out of a beehive, smothered him in honey, and then let bees attack him and sting him to death. Probably the most brutal way to die. And part of the reason Candyman scares me so bad is because I'm scared of bees. So, not okay. Well, then come to find out, Helen reminds him of his former lover. And so, in order for the baby that he has to be released, Helen has to offer herself up to him. Well, obviously, you know how that goes. She does, in order to save the baby, and which she also does. But she also kills the Candyman. Wink. Clearly not, because there's sequels, but I haven't seen those yet, so we'll get there when we get there. So, end of the movie, she kills him. They're together, not really, but just their chemistry throughout the whole movie, you knew that she could not resist Candyman, which was the first time in a horror movie that I wouldn't consider Helen a final girl. I guess you could. But the interaction she had with Candyman is very different than you see in most horror movies. It was not a standoffish aggression. She was lost in the way he presented himself, just how he was. She could not stay away. So I love the dynamic that they had throughout the entire movie. It was a super, super fun chemistry to see. And just down to everything with the score and the lighting, you really couldn't tell when things were going to happen, which is a really fun aspect to any movie. You know, if you can be surprised, I would rather be surprised. I mean, here's the way I look at it. I've seen a lot of scary movies, so it's going to take a lot to surprise me. And if you can do that, you've done successful. And I think I covered all. Oh, I actually found out that Virginia Madsen was actually allergic to bees. She had to use baby bees because they weren't developed, the stingers weren't developed, so the bees that were on her were actually not even a day old yet. But Tony Todd's bees, they were real, and it's true. He got stung in the mouth, in the chest, everywhere. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on Candyman.